everybody, this is Kohdok here, and I know I haven't done any reviews for a while, though part of it is due to a lack of fun stuff to review, and another part of it is I had some real hang-ups on getting imported what I want to review today. Now, while the toy market over here hasn't really been anything exciting lately, in Japan it's a whole other story where they've just been going crazy on this new series that's actually a rival for Pokemon's sales over here. And now its creators plan on releasing it worldwide in order to try to, you guessed it, take over the world.
Of course!
So is this new series the Pokemon Killer Level 5 hopes it will be? Well, let's dig into Yokai Watch and find out. In the Yokai Watch universe, the world is full of invisible spirits called yokai. These yokai come in many forms and tend to exert their will on people and things nearby, causing things like strange weather and odd compulsions, such as making someone a blabbermouth or act ungrateful. In an unusually bad mood, it could be a yokai's gotten to ya. Enter Keita, a kid who one day stumbles across an item called the Yokai Watch, a piece of wristwear that is equipped with a special lens that lets one see these invisible yokai. Once this happens, it's up to Keita to figure out how to quell the rogue monsters. So in a sense, the name Yokai Watch has a double meaning, referring both to the device as well as keeping a vigil for any yokai activities. Now, most of these yokai are pretty much harmless and are just causing mischief and thus can be simply negotiated with, but some have to be dealt with more forcefully, which is where the yokai medals come into play. Befriending a yokai gives Keita their corresponding medal, which allows him to summon them at any time by putting the medal into the watch. The idea is to summon yokai whose abilities can dispel or counteract the offending yokais, or just picking the proper yokai to fight it out. For example, summoning a yokai who feeds on dreams to fight off a yokai who prevents sleep. It spawned a multimedia franchise that spans across video games, toys, and cartoons. Hasbro recently latched onto it, and we could see a release of this as soon as next year. Since the 3DS is region-locked, I haven't really had the chance to go over the game, but it looks to be a pretty simple monster game where you find and battle yokai with a few touchscreen gimmicks thrown in. The toys made by Bandai are equally straightforward. Of course, you have the watch, which goes on your wrist, and it can actually fit on my wrists, although I don't know if the fact that it fits onto my giant adult wrists should make me happy or depressed. The toy behaves like the watch in question. It has the pop-up lens and the flashlight to let you search for gold. Ah, jeez! But the real fun happens when you put in the yokai medals. When a medal is inserted, it makes a chipper little jingle. There are several classes of yokai, and each one gets their own tune. They're upbeat and really get stuck in your head. Afterwards, tapping the flashlight button makes the summoned yokai shout out their name. The medals actually work through a series of bumps on the backs of them that hit a line of buttons in the watch itself, which is how it recognizes the medal. If anything, it works like the Power Rangers Gosei Morpher, only using sturdy medals instead of flimsy playing cards. Inserting the medals is actually pretty snappy, and the gimmick itself is satisfying to use. The medals get sold in random 2-packs as well as gashapon machines in Japan. Of course, there's other merchandise such as plushes and binders and even some sprue kits. I'd rank these sprue kits as like a level 1.5, more complex than level 1s, but not as fancy as level 2s. The only real problem with it is the price. The Yokai Watch on itself comes with only 2 medals and costs $30. I don't know if folks in America will be able to understand the kind of value they get. I mean, it is kind of a sophisticated device, but there's actually a cultural thing in Japan where part of something's value is actually how much it costs, and that's actually been a problem with Bandai importing stuff for years. And then again, because Hasbro is handling the localization instead of Bandai, we don't know if they're going to use the Bandai stuff or if they're going to come up with their own things. So, if they do come out with their own things, you'll at least get to know what the folks in Japan get to play with. The anime centers on Keita, whose name is actually a pun for watch in Japanese, who one day wanders into the woods and comes across a gashapon machine out of which flies Whisper, a self-proclaimed ghost butler. Whisper gives Keita the yokai watch, and from then on, Keita has the responsibility to deal with the matters regarding the human and yokai worlds clashing, sort of like the Avatar, only less epic. Keita soon befriends a ghost cat named Jibanyan, and the story begins proper. The series lacks an overarching plot for the most part, and tends to center on single incidents where Keita must use his cunning and growing repertoire of yokai pals to help him out. Although you have to realize that, since they're invisible to other people, how Keita talking to the yokai must make him look to everyone else. I'm just saying, maybe he should invest in a Bluetooth or something. Unlike the video games, which are more battle-centric, the anime takes the revolutionary approach of finding non-violent solutions to most of the yokai's problems, with direct combat saved only for the most hostile of adversaries. The show does a great job of showing off all the yokai flavors, and they actually come in a huge variety, depending on what sorts of legends inspire them. Believe it or not, something notable is that gender and aesthetics aren't tied together. In many shows, any sort of female monster has to be cute or sexy or otherwise aesthetically pleasing somehow, but in Yokai Watch, anything goes. For example, you have Doyorina, a super depressing blob who's actually in a stable marriage with a super happy blob called Honobono, Toho Hogisu, who is a flying pear, I guess, and Baku, which is this oddly sexy taper thing? The show is actually pretty hit and miss. A lot of the humor is sort of impenetrable at times, and it takes a pretty long time for the show to figure itself out. There's even an episode that explains why the watch yells at you if you load a medal incorrectly. A whole episode for that one little feature, and it's just as bad as you might imagine. I'm also not a very big fan of Jibanyan. I mean, he's supposed to be like the Pikachu of the series, where he's supposed to be super appealing to kids to draw people into the series, but this guy's origin involves being run over by a truck, something that's played for laughs in the first few episodes, and he tends to spend most of his spare time just loafing about on the couch, stealing chocolate bars and reading dirty magazines. I don't know, maybe he's supposed to be a parody of Pikachu, but either way, I just don't like it. The show does have its saving grace, though, in the form of Koma-san. Koma-san is a Koma Inu, and while he isn't featured often in the regular show, he often appears in the side stories featured in the episodes. The actual show with Keita is actually only about half of the series, where the rest is dedicated to other characters within the expanded universe, the most prominent of which is Koma-san, who is practically a second mascot for the series. Koma-san lives with his stepbrother Komajiro on a little shack in the river. If I had to compare Koma-san to anything, it's actually Forrest Gump, in that he's a country bumpkin of middling intelligence who's always bumbling his way into drama. In the show, you get to watch as Koma-san explores the city, orders fast food, falls in love, goes to a nightclub, becomes a successful businessman, invents a new dance craze, disarms a bomb, and I think I've lost some of you guys somewhere. Either way, the Koma-san serials are intensely heartwarming when they're not being intensely funny. It's easily the best and most mature thing on the show, and I hope they keep it intact when they bring it over. There's a fair share of good episodes too, like an episode where Keita finds some ancient yokai to help him pull a prank on his friends, only for said yokai to discover that their methods for scaring people may have worked fine in the past, but they don't really work so well on a generation of kids that were raised on zombie movies. This episode works better than a lot of the kid meets a has-been hero episodes in that these yokai don't really look like they were has-beens when we first meet them and don't go into denial when they discover that they've lost their edge, instead training in order to become scary again. That, and look at Rokuro Kubi's sad pose, it just cracks me up every time. Of course, said episode descends into mediocrity later, but the first half is worth watching. Soon after the first season of Yokai Watch aired, episode 27 started off with the promise of something big. A new season and new games also meant a new watch. They go whole hog, writing it up like the release of a new iPhone, complete with an introduction by Steve Jaws, who I guess is supposed to be the lost street shark. And it is... Guguri.
Masaka? ため長い。新しい妖怪ウォッチはこれだ。
The Yokai Watch Zero Shiki. Of course, the new watch came with a new toy, though for the most part it acts about the same. However, rather than automatically summoning the yokai when the medal is inserted, the Zero Shiki can instead be switched over to Mode 1, which plays a lyric-free loop of the summoning music, or over to Mode 2, which skips straight to the summoning. However, the old medals don't work with the new watch and vice versa. Get it? It's meta humor! Then again, the medals are color-coded to tell you which medals work with which watch. The silver and blue medals work with the regular watch, while the green and red medals work with the Zero Shiki. There's also the gold legend medals, though they're pretty rare and I haven't found any, so I couldn't tell you which works with which. Although if I had to compare the two, is it a crime that I like the old one better? No, really! The regular watch has this chipper attitude, while the Zero Shiki talks like some automated voice on a subway. It's like, we have now arrived at Grand Central Station with monsters, please mind the gap, versus, yeah, let's summon some freaking monsters! Even the flashlight on the Zero Shiki takes time to wind up? Curse you, Steve Jaws, you and your progress! And that's Yokai Watch. So, is it the world-dominating Pokemon-killing force its creators think it is? No. Although it has some charm, I think a lot of Yokai Watch's appeal in Japan comes from how Japanese it is. Pokemon was designed to be super accessible to people. You can usually tell what something is just by looking at it. Hey, that's a cat! That's a turtle! That's a mouse! Whereas Yokai Watch characters are based almost purely on creatures from Japanese folklore and aren't as easy to recognize. It's a cat! It's a cat? Elastigirl the later years? What? I think it'll have a pretty big effect. I mean, come on, how many of you guys even knew what a Komainu is? Without using Wikipedia, you bunch of cheaters! Don't believe me? I can actually pull an example from Pokemon, Mawile. While Mawile has come out of obscurity thanks to its Mega Evolution, which is the best Mega ever and I love it, Mawile for the longest time languished in obscurity in the West. It was that yellow thing with the bell bottoms and the extra set of teeth that isn't as useful as Sableye. And even when it did get a Mega, people were like, really? This thing gets a Mega? This thing, and not... I give up. The truth is, Mawile is based on a yokai called the Furakuchi Onna, a woman who has a second dangerous mouth hidden in the hair on the back of her head. While this monster has gotten a little more attention in the West, it's still pretty dang obscure, and I don't think many people got the reference at all when Mawile came out. So much so that the next time Pokemon came out with a monster based on an obscure Japanese yokai, they made sure there was no mistake by giving Frostlass, based on the Yuki Onna, a freaking kimono. Yokai Watch is basically an entire Mon library made of nothing but Mawiles. Now, I don't think it's the super Japanese monsters or even the super Japanese setting that I think will make this thing flop in the US. Honestly, I think it's going to be the super Japanese sense of humor. A lot of Japanese humor just doesn't seem to work in the States. Take Tingle from Legend of Zelda, for instance. In Japan, this little man-child is considered funny and popular enough to get his own spin-off game. I don't think I have to tell you how people in America think about Tingle. A lot of the humor is cut from the same cloth. Case in point, Gene Menken. Gene Menken was a creepy old guy who, through an accident, got changed into a toy poodle with a creepy old guy's face. He went on to do creepy old guy things and claimed that the fact that he was a dog made it okay for him to do creepy old guy things. Like I said before, funny in Japan, but in America, just plain creepy. And Gene Menken wasn't a one-off character either. He was a major character for nearly 20 episodes, getting a bunch of his own side stories just like Koma-san. He eventually got locked in Alcatraz, thank God, and replaced by his stories about this character called Kyubi, a fox who seeks to gain ultimate power by hitting on 10-year-old girls. Seriously, Japan? What, do we have to stage an intervention or something? I mean, I guess you could speculate that Kyubi himself is also a kid, but he looks kind of grown up and I'm thinking about it too hard. Add to that some obscure pop culture references, strange toilet humor, this guy, who might be worse than Gene Menken, believe me, you don't want to know what he's doing right now, and the puns. Dear God, the puns. Half of the yokai's names are some sort of pun in Japanese, the kind that really won't work in English. Perfect example is the Onigiri Samurai. Its name can be read two ways in Japanese, either spaced out as Onigiri, meaning ogre slaying, or as one word Onigiri, meaning rice ball sandwich. How the heck are they gonna translate that? So yeah, final word, it's a fine idea in Japan, but unless we get some kind of miracle localization work, I don't think it's really gonna stand a chance here in the United States. I mean, I imagine it'll probably catch a small niche of people who are already enamored with Japanese culture, and I imagine the games will get like some Fossil Fighters level success in that it's kind of that niche Mon crowd, but a full-blown Pokemon killer? Nah, that just ain't happening. Seeing how the last level 5 series that got imported went with them cutting out the best episodes of the series like a bunch of chickens! I don't expect much. So that's Yokai Watch by Level 5 and Bandai, and until next time, this is Kohdok signing off.